All right, as we
It's kind of dark.
move through all of these systems of transport and immunity and nutrition and so forth, we're talking about these representative organisms. Some simple organisms, some plants, earthworms, grasshoppers, and eventually humans. So talk a little bit more about that. We'll start with the earthworms. So earthworms are obviously more complex than the hydra was. It has more cells. Hydra doesn't have organs or systems, but an earthworm does. It has a nervous system, a digestive system, and a circulatory system. So that's what we're talking about here. So the earthworm, they have a closed circulatory system. So we'll talk about the grasshopper in a minute. But a closed circulatory system means that the blood is contained within vessels. Okay? That blood flows through these vessels and it's constrained to those vessels. Earthworm blood is a little different than you're probably used to. It doesn't have red blood cells like, for example, human blood. Instead, there is hemoglobin, which is the protein that carries oxygen. There's hemoglobin in the plasma itself, but not as a part of a blood cell. So it still can carry oxygen because that's what hemoglobin does. It binds to oxygen to transport from place to place. Earthworm's blood is red, okay, because of that hemoglobin. Okay. Animals that have other types of compounds carrying oxygen may have different colored blood, but their blood is red. And their hearts, they're technically not a heart as we might think of it. But the heart of an earthworm are these aortic arches, these sort of loops, okay, of blood vessels that basically pump the blood into the rest of the circulatory system. So in earthworms, the blood flows down. There's several main blood vessels. There's a dorsal blood vessel on the top that brings the blood back to the hearts, and then there are various blood vessels that bring it down the length of the worm from one part to another. So you have the blood vessels, and then you have these aortic arches which pump the blood. So you can see, again, we talked about earthworms. They're very important to the soil and so forth. Grasshoppers have a different sort of circulatory system. Grasshoppers have an open circulatory system. Okay. And so what that means is the blood basically is pumped into just sort of openings that surround the cells, sinuses they're called, that are in the grasshopper's body. So the blood starts off in sort of tubes and vessels, and there's a heart that pumps that blood, but then it just sort of drains into these sort of openings, these cavities, and then eventually gets returned back into circulation because the heart has little openings in it, little holes in it. So blood goes back into the hearts through these blood vessels, then kind of drips down and surrounds the whole interior of the grasshopper. So that's called an open circulatory system. And so in this open circulatory system, there are the dorsal aorta, which are these tubes that sort of pump the blood out, and then it just drips down and then returns back and forms this sort of cycle. So the hearts pump the blood into this dorsal aorta where it bathes the fluid, and it's actually usually called hemolymph and sometimes not called blood. It's colorless, okay, because it doesn't have any hemoglobin, it doesn't have any red blood cells. And that's true because it's not, the blood in the grasshopper is not used for transporting oxygen. Grasshoppers have a separate system of trachea that gets oxygen into their cells. So oxygen is not really being transported by the blood. It's nutrients and waste materials that are being moved around in the earthworm's hemolymph. Okay. And as the moves more slowly, that this circulation of blood, since it's not contained in blood vessels, happens a little bit more slowly. There's also no capillaries, because again, blood is just surrounding all of its tissue, okay? And so it doesn't have capillaries because the blood doesn't stay in vessels for the entire time. So that's what the grasshopper's circulatory system is like. Okay. And again, doesn't carry oxygen, doesn't carry carbon dioxide, because there's a separate system for that. You probably notice this. You ever like spot a fly in your bedroom on the wall, and the gunk that comes out, it's not red, it's not bloody, it's yellowish, greenish. That's the hemolymph that you're seeing. Okay? Not, and that's they don't have blood in them. That's red. So the difference, you look at sort of an overview of the difference between the two. Again, in the grasshopper, you have the heart, which just pumps the blood, and then it just sort of drips down, surrounding all the cells. Versus in the earthworm, the blood is contained in vessels for the entire time. Closed circulatory system versus an open circulatory system. Different adaptations to transport of material. Okay, so the majority of this topic is about human circulation, transport in humans, and there's a lot to talk about as we talk about that. Just to give you the overview, okay, so humans have a closed circulatory system. Our blood is always contained in blood vessels, arteries, veins, capillaries. Blood is moved through our circulatory system by our heart, which is 4-chambered. That blood is pumped out of the heart through arteries, and capillaries, and back through veins. We have 4 to 6 liters of blood in our body, and it's a type of tissue, a fluid tissue, sort of a liquid tissue. It contains red blood cells that have hemoglobin in them. That hemoglobin, as we talked about, binds to oxygen to carry it. That's why our blood is red, because of this hemoglobin. It has iron in it. That's why we need iron in our diet. That iron is what bonds to the oxygen for transport. Our blood's important for our circulatory system for several reasons. To distribute nutrients from one part of our body to another, whether that's oxygen or vitamins, minerals, hormones, all are transported through the blood. Our blood is responsible for helping us to fight off infections through our immune system. Our blood is responsible for clotting if we have damage or injury to a blood vessel. It also helps distribute heat around our body equally, transfer heat from one area to another. So if your heart, basic heart, heart with all its attached arteries and veins, another heart. You know what this is from?
I want to say Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Which one?
The one.
Oh wait, isn't it?
Temple of Doom.
Yeah, it's one where they're like sacrificing and then they drop them down to the ground.
Yeah, Temple of Doom. How about this one?
Vampires.
No.
That lady has a guitar. What?
This is the band heart. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're
Has
very
nothing to
pale,
do
so
with
they look like vampires.
Heart. All right. So if we look at sort of what our blood is composed of, okay? You know, if you take a sample of blood and centrifuge it, spin it around very, very quickly, parts of the blood will separate out, okay? And this is sort of what it would look like. Okay? There's the plasma portion of the blood, which is the majority of the blood. It's a liquid. There's the red blood cells, okay, which form the second largest part, and they're suspended within the plasma. And then there are some other things. Okay? There's platelets. There's other dissolved substances. If you look at the plasma itself, it's just mostly water. There's some proteins in the plasma as well, and other dissolved substances. If we look at the other portion of the blood, okay, most of it's red blood cells, much smaller portion white blood cells, and then platelets. Okay? And here you see even the white blood cells broken down. There's various types of white blood cells, which we'll be talking about, and there's different proteins found in the plasma as well. So that's sort of what our blood is composed of. When we look at it, just looks like a red fluid, but it's actually made of several things mixed together. All right, so what is in our blood? Okay. Well, let's start with the plasma portion. This is the liquid portion of our blood. It's more than half of our blood is plasma. When you look at it separated out from the rest of the blood, this is what it looks like. It's a sort of yellowish liquid. This is plasma that is ready for plasma infusion if somebody were to need plasma. Here it is after it's been centrifuged, where you see the red blood cells in other parts, and then you see the plasma towards the top. Okay. So mostly water, 90% water, some dissolved proteins which have different functions as well, immune functions, clotting functions, and so forth. It's basically for the transport of the other parts of the blood. For the red blood cells, which are cells, they need to be transported by something, and that something is the plasma of the blood. And also, most of the carbon dioxide that's transported around our body, that's removed from our cells, is carried in the plasma. Some is carried on the red blood cells, but the majority of it is dissolved in the plasma. So as our cells are creating carbon dioxide due to respiration, the plasma dissolves some of that and helps carry it away from those cells and out to the lungs in order to be exhaled. And the amount of carbon dioxide in our blood is something that's very important because, as we know, carbon dioxide, when it's dissolved in a liquid, forms what? Yeah, an acid, carbonic acid. And that lowers the pH. Remember when I exhaled into the tube of bromoethyl blue, it turned to yellow, okay, because it's becoming more acidic. Okay? And if too much carbon dioxide is dissolved in the blood, it could cause our blood acidity to increase, the pH of our blood to decrease, and that could be dangerous because, as you know, various enzymes and various chemical reactions that happen in our body happen only at certain pH levels, certain temperatures, and so forth. So our plasma of our blood has sort of a buffering system. If you remember back when we talked about pH, a buffer is a substance that helps resist changes in pH, that moderates the effects of an acid or a base being introduced. So carbon dioxide is converted, okay, into bicarbonate. Here you see the bicarbonate reaction where you have various acidic or basic compounds. As carbon dioxide is exhaled and mixes with the water, okay, it forms bicarbonate, okay, and that can buffer the addition of hydrogen ions. So if our blood becomes too acidic, this bicarbonate can reestablish equilibrium to keep our blood pH at the proper level, okay? And so it's important for that purpose. And finally, there's something called blood serum, which is sometimes used in blood transfusion and so forth, because we have in our plasma, there's various clotting factors that help our blood to clot, and sometimes blood plasma is, those clotting factors are removed, so you can just have pure plasma to give to a person if they needed it. If they had lost large amounts of blood and they needed some plasma, then they can get that transfused. Red blood cells. Red blood cells are important. They're the main carrier of oxygen and some carbon dioxide in our blood. are these biconcave discs, kind of look like a frisbee bagel without a hole in the middle. And interesting thing about red blood cells, they're non-nucleated. They don't have a nucleus. They're a cell, but as they're maturing, the nucleus dissolves. But they do contain hemoglobin. In a cubic milliliter, a tiny little amount of blood, there's about 5 million red blood cells. Okay. Here's what they look like in electron micrograph. Okay, you can see that distinctive shape. And like all the other parts of the blood, they are produced in the bone marrow. So they're produced inside the middle of our long bones. That's where they're produced. This is what blood looks like if it's going to be transfused into somebody. So it needs a red blood cell transfusion. That's what a packet of blood looks like. And so hemoglobin, this is a hemoglobin molecule. Sort of this ring-like molecule. Okay? It's very, very similar to chlorophyll. Okay? They're both pigmented molecules, although hemoglobin has iron in the middle, okay, versus chlorophyll, which has magnesium. And that results in a different color to those two molecules. When oxygen binds to hemoglobin, it forms oxyhemoglobin. And again, it also carries about 20% of the carbon dioxide. And down here you see chlorophyll versus hemoglobin. If you look at the structure of these molecules, it's very similar. We have a storehouse of red blood cells in our spleen. Okay? It's also red blood cells when they have outlived sort of their useful life. They are recycled and destroyed by the liver and the spleen. The liver can convert these blood cells, okay, into bile, reuse the iron that's part of that hemoglobin molecule. And sometimes people may not get enough iron in their diet, and that could lead to anemia. And what happens is the lack of iron means their blood doesn't have enough hemoglobin, and it can't carry oxygen properly. And so a person with anemia, they may be tired very easily. They may not have a lot of energy because those blood cells are not carrying the proper amount of oxygen to the rest of their body. It's more common in women than it is in men. And it can be caused by lots of different factors. It can be caused by hemorrhaging. Okay? Could be caused by too few red blood cells. And the red blood cells, that should be a C, are misshapen. A lack of iron, lack of hemoglobin, stress, all those things can cause this. What about misshapen red blood cells? Does anyone know what the name of the disease in which a person's red blood cells are?
It's like sickle something.
Sickle cell disease, yeah. Sickle cell anemia sometimes called. And the sickle cell disease it's caused by a single mutation in the genes, which results in an incorrect form of hemoglobin, which results in blood cells being misshapen and not carrying enough oxygen. It can lead to a whole host of negative side effects. Sophia?
For different blood types, what makes them different?
On our blood cells, and we'll get to this probably tomorrow, we have antigens, little proteins that are on the outside of our blood cells that sort of advertise that they're part of us, and that determines our blood type. And so two people may have different antigens on their blood cells. And so if a foreign blood cell is put into your body, there's a chance that your antibodies in your blood say, hey, this is not supposed to be here, and they attack it. And that's why matching of blood types is very important when someone gets a blood transfusion.
It's the universal donor.
Type O, yeah.
Type O, okay.
Yeah, type O is a universal donor, and we're going to get into all those details eventually. So the symptoms of anemia, if you're tired, pale, sick, and it can be treated if it's due to a lack of iron, getting more iron in your diet, vitamin B12. In extreme cases, a person can get blood transfusions of healthy blood. Those are all ways a person could be treated for anemia. All right. Let's actually hold off here for now. We'll come to this probably on Friday. Let's go over our homework.